Hey, let's hope that this is working. Hey, we're working. Unbelievable. Hey, everybody. Saturday night. I just got paid. Well, so nice to be here with you again on Facebook. I had moved it to Instagram because every time I tried to do this live stream last time, it kept shutting down. But I guess it rectified itself. If it goes out while I'm on, I'm not going to know about it for another half an hour. So we'll see what happens. Okay. I had a Captain Beefheart tribute show, the World of Captain Beefheart, last night at Roulette with the fabulous Nona Hendricks. That went so well. Still buzzing from it, so I thought I would do a little Beefheart. think of this as minimalism. That went to some unexpected places. Did it not? All right, so we're going to let's see, quiet things down a little bit here. And what can I say? It was a beautiful day in Manhattan today. A lot of beautiful sunshine and warm weather, almost up to the 70s. Not quite, but now it's cold again. And, well, you know, it could be voice. What can I say? So the gig last night, yes, it was really a wonderful experience for all concerned on the playing side of things. I did see a little bit of Matmos before we went on, and they were quite good. It's an electronic duo with acoustic guitar. And I wish I could have seen more. I want to thank Bang on a Can, Kenny Samuelson, who invited us to perform at this thing, and also the men of the World of Captain Beefheart, Jesse Krakow on bass, Richard Dworkin on drums, and Jordan Shapiro on keyboards. Nona Hendricks was her usual magnificent self, and people really seem to love it. So that's encouraging, and I hope that we can do more of these shows somewhere in the vicinity of you out there. So we'll see, but we were very, very happy with the results, and thanks again to Roulette for such a superb production of the event. Everybody was so helpful and friendly and nice, and so we just felt the love and responded in kind. So I don't know if there are clips maybe floating around. I'll post them if they're any good. And that's not it. Now, I've been working hard on a new arrangement of a Wagner piece, the overture to the Flying Dutchman. And I'm going to perform that next up at MIT this coming Friday. What is that? May 6th, I believe. I gotta check the date, but it's next Friday, this coming Friday. And that's going to be with a fantastic dancer, Allison Clancy, who's also a really, really good sound recording artist in her own right, singer-songwriter and guitar player. And she is the principal dancer of the Metropolitan Ballet Corps. And we met, actually she recorded some video clips and posted them after my 40th anniversary show back on 9/11 last September at Le Poisson Rouge here in New York. And I reached out to her to thank her. She was there courtesy of her uncle, Tom Brigham, who was a longtime fan of mine, it turned out, and had been to numerous shows. So he had invited his niece along, and she was quite taken with the music and was very enthusiastic. So in just meeting her to thank her, she told me about this project, and she said, I'm going to dance a piece of choreography that was choreographed by Carolyn Chua, who is a Chinese-American choreographer, does a lot of work with the Met, and she was featured with a solo dance to this overture, which you all know, I'm sure, the classic motifs. I'm not going to play it until after the gig. I don't want to jinx it, but I've been working so hard on this for several months. I've written about it recently for culturecatch.com. I've got a number of new pieces, articles, and such up there. Check out that website. One word, culturecatch.com. Thanks again to Mark Petracca, aka Dusty Wright, for inviting me to contribute. So there's an article up there about close listening, how I derive and have actually done many arrangements of other people's music or other cultures' music. For instance, Chinese pop of the 30s and 40s. I did this because I did it through close listening, which was some skill I had to develop to work with Don Van Vliet. It all circles back on Beefheart. As I mentioned last night in our show, he had three basic means of communicating music to the members of his band. Not being really a trained musician per se, or able to read and write music. So how he did this, he could whistle really well and get on instruments sometimes and produce through composed pieces that were playable only once. And also he could improvise on piano. That was his primary means of communicating the densest, most complex pieces. And then he would tape himself doing this and then hand you the tape and say, learn this on the guitar. So, and scat sing. Okay, there's a fourth way. But some of these instructions were a little bit on the vague side, honestly. So the band had to do double service to realize them. And after, sometimes we would huddle together apart from the scheduled rehearsals in the run-up to making a record and try and codify the stuff, because sometimes the instructions were a little vague. And one wasn't sure whether it was 13 and a half bars of this piece before jumping to the next section or what. So we would try and codify it as best we could, and then it was further modified, reviewed and modified by Don, and sometimes with the active participation of Jan Van Vliet, his wife. And anyway, it was a challenge then, but it was a skill that I was happy to really refine under his tutelage. I had to, because some of the pieces were, you couldn't really notate them. The tone clusters were so dense when he was applying all of his pressure of 10 fingers that it was hard to pick out the chords precisely. And I understand that they have software now, reconfigured, recorded sounds, basically music, but probably bird song too, I guess. And it will transcribe it and notate it automatically. This computer program, but that's neither. That's cheating to me. I mean, to me, it was like always a privilege to get really deep into these pieces through close listening, because you wouldn't be able to really reproduce it exactly, and so you were actually bringing something else of yourself to bear on them to give it an individual stamp. I could go into this depth further, but I mean, for me, he would always say, you gotta use the heaviest strings on a guitar from like 065 to 013, and that's almost like piano wire. And he would say, guitar is merely a stand-up piano, which was an interesting concept. But honestly, he was also urging us to get metal finger picks. I found them cumbersome. And so developed my own technique through just cutting my fingernails as close to the padded flesh as I could, short in other words, and then toughening up the fingers through just playing. You know, I mean, sometimes you would develop calluses and blisters, and that was a drag. And you know, there were many times I would have to reach for some sort of medicinal remedy, such as camphorphenique. They sell that in most drugstores, and you rub those on blisters to try and reduce the swell. Anyway, or if it was really cold, you might just, you know, the blister could break in the very cold air, and then your finger would be quite sore and painful, and you'd be, do I really want to tear it up further by playing? Some guitars have been known to use super glue there on their fingers. I had a version of that going at one time, but it would seem that you were courting some sort of toxicity in your system if it got into your bloodstream. So I would avoid that anyway. Anyway, so Beefheart, you know, through that close listening, I was able to arrange all sorts of music, primarily classical music. You know, so this piece that I'm doing with Allison is something that I just did through repeated listening, close listening, at least 100, 200 times. You know, many man hours. A lot of it's done in Maastricht, where I really appreciated being kind of isolated from all of the temptations of New York. Let's say, you know, the phone is always ringing, or there's some noise outside, or it's quite a lively and a rude metropolis. I'll emphasize that. Certainly, I had an album called The Ordeal of Civility. I would say, I mean, you can read about this in the New York Times. They're sort of monitoring the situation also. But I think all across the world, you know, due to the pandemic, this stress level is kicked up to such a degree in most people that they're really on the edge of rudeness all the time. And certainly on the weekends, you know, to kind of thread my way through a sea of youngsters, millennials, whatnot, in the neighborhood who could care less that you might be approaching them, you know, walking, well, in my case, a little gingerly. That's another story. But they're all on their cell phones, and, you know, you better get out of the way. Well, I stand my ground, you know, I don't. I used to, and then I just said, fuck it. I mean, like, you really have to acknowledge other people around you in a respectful way to have a civil society on the most basic level, do you not? So, anyway, I stay indoors mostly on the weekends. That is the lesson there. And not driving either. Yeah, it sometimes forces me back on my own devices to play more, which is always a good thing. So, all right, well, I still have a few minutes. Here's a very, very good book. I'm halfway through, okay? It's called Jews Don't Count. And it's so incendiary, it nearly exploded there and fell out of my fingers. Quite a good screed, which points out that among other racist tropes that are so prevalent in the world currently, anti-Semitism has made more than a comeback, And yesterday was Holocaust Remembrance Day in Europe and here too. So, yeah, I posted a performance I did at the United Nations General Assembly a couple of years ago for the January observation of this this tragic Holocaust that afflicted my people. And this book really brings it all back home. Also, other statistics that I've noticed recently are very alarming, such as the fact that according to one poll, 60% of young Americans have never heard of the Holocaust or know what it is, or think the Jews started it, or something, really far-fetched and crazy. And that is alarming. That is alarming. But, okay, I want to leave on a positive note. If you're in the Cambridge area up in Massachusetts or Boston area, please come to this free concert at MIT with Alison Clancy, myself, and Richard Wagner, who was a repugnant anti-Semite, but there again, I'd like to separate the art from the beliefs, though sometimes I know it's hard. And Wagner is a hard case. I quoted from Ride of the Valkyries in the score for the Golem, which I co-composed with Walter Horn, and then eventually did play it in Israel. But they had a ban on Wagner's music for many a year there. So at the time I did it, I was let's say it was under the radar, kind of a quotation. But then it was officially made okay to listen to it. And in fact, if you know the history of Zionism, one of the founders of the State of Israel would listen to Wagner on a nightly basis. It was one of his favorite composers, which is a paradox, I know. But anyway, music is music, politics is politics, and ne'er the twain shall meet. I'm all for the enjoyment and proliferation of music. I think it's a healing force in the universe, and whether or not you got healed listening to a little improv there is a moot point, I suppose, for some of you, but to some people it would be nectar of the gods. So thanks again for tuning in. And thanks again for the Bang on a Can guys inviting us to do that. And good, the feed is still going. I'll be back on Tuesday at the same time. All right, everybody be safe, be well. Love you guys.